I never thought I'd find peace in a place designed for broken people. But then again, I never thought I'd wake up screaming 3 times a night either, drenching my sheets in cold sweat while my heart tried to punch its way out of my chest. The VA hospital wasn't my first choice for dealing with what the doctors called severe PTSD. But after the 3rd time I'd scared my sister's kids by having a flashback during Sunday dinner, she'd driven me there herself, tears streaming down her face as she told me she loved me, but couldn't watch me disappear anymore. The intake process was exactly what you'd expect. Fluorescent lights that hummed too loud, clipboards with too many questions, and a nurse with kind eyes who'd probably heard every story twice. They assigned me to Ward C, a long hallway of semi-private rooms where veterans like me tried to piece ourselves back together. My room was at the end, which I appreciated. Fewer people walking past, less noise. The window looked out over a small courtyard where some guys would sit and smoke, even though technically you weren't supposed to, but nobody said anything because we'd all earned the right to our small rebellions. My roommate arrived 3 days after I did. I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling and counting the tiles for the 100th time when I heard the orderly wheel in someone new. I didn't turn my head at first. I'd learned in the Marines that sometimes the best way to handle new situations was to observe before engaging. But then I heard his voice, thanking the orderly, and something about the tone made me look over. He was maybe 30, around my age, with dark hair that fell across his forehead and shoulders that looked like they'd carried more than their share of weight. His left arm was in a sling, and he moved carefully, like someone who'd recently learned that bodies could betray you. When he caught me looking, he gave me a small smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. I recognized that smile. I'd seen it in the mirror every morning. His name was Marcus, and he didn't talk much that first day. We established the basic roommate protocols without saying much. He took the bed by the door. I kept mine by the window. He preferred the bathroom first in the morning. I didn't care. We were both there for the same reason, the nightmares and the memories that wouldn't let go. And there was a mutual understanding that we didn't owe each other our stories. Not yet, anyway. The first nightmare came that night. I should have warned him, but I'd gotten so used to sleeping alone in my apartment before this that I'd forgotten what it was like to have someone witness it. I was back in Kandahar, the marketplace explosion replaying in slow motion, the smell of burning metal and flesh, the screams that never quite sounded human. I woke up shouting, my hands gripping the sheet so hard my knuckles had gone white. In the dim light from the hallway, I could see Marcus sitting up in his bed, watching me. I expected him to look annoyed or scared, maybe ask for a room transfer in the morning. Instead, he just said quietly, "You okay?" His voice was steady, no judgment in it, just a simple question. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak, and lay back down. My heart was still racing, and I knew from experience I wouldn't sleep again for hours. But Marcus didn't turn away. He stayed sitting up for a while, and somehow his presence in the darkness made it a little easier to breathe. The second nightmare came around 3 in the morning. This one was worse, more visceral. I woke up gasping, convinced I was suffocating, my hands clawing at my chest. Before I could fully orient myself, I felt something warm close around my right hand. Marcus had gotten out of his bed and was sitting on the edge of mine, his good hand holding mine firmly, his thumb moving in small circles across my knuckles. He didn't say anything at first, just held on while I struggled to remember where I was, when I was. The VA hospital, not Afghanistan. 2023, not 2011. Safe, not in danger. His hand was an anchor, something solid and real to focus on while the panic slowly drained away. When I could finally breathe normally again, I looked at him, ready to apologize, to tell him he didn't have to do this, that I was fine. But the words died in my throat because he was looking at me with such understanding, such complete lack of pity, that I realized he knew exactly what this was like. "I get them too," he said softly. "The nightmares. Mine are different probably, but the fear's the same." He paused, and in the near darkness, I could see his jaw tighten. I found that having someone there helps, someone who understands. So if it's okay with you, I'll be here. For the bad nights. I should have said no. I should have told him I didn't need help, that I'd been handling this on my own for 2 years, and I was fine. but I was so tired of lying, so exhausted from pretending I had it together when I was falling apart. So instead, I just squeezed his hand and nodded. He stayed there until I fell back asleep, and true to his word, he didn't let go. It became our routine. The nightmares came most nights, sometimes twice, sometimes more. And every time, without fail, Marcus would be there. Some nights he'd sit on the edge of my bed, holding my hand until the shaking stopped. Other nights, when it was really bad, he'd talk to me in that low, steady voice, telling me about growing up in Oregon, about his niece who wanted to be an astronaut, about the coffee shop he used to go to every morning before his deployment. Mundane details that reminded me the world was bigger than my trauma, that there was still beauty and normalcy out there waiting. During the day, we started spending more time together. The hospital had group therapy sessions, art therapy, a gym where we were supposed to work on our physical recovery. Marcus and I gravitated toward each other naturally, sitting next to each other in the circle of plastic chairs while other veterans shared their stories, spotting each other in the gym even though his shoulder was still healing and I couldn't lift more than 20 pounds without my hands starting to shake. We talked more as the weeks went by. I learned that Marcus had been Army, a medic who'd seen too many people die despite his best efforts. His injury had come during his last deployment, an IED that had torn through their convoy and killed 3 of his friends. He carried their names with him, literally, tattooed on his ribs where his heart would have been. He showed me one afternoon when we were alone in the room, lifting his shirt with a self-conscious gesture that I understood completely, because vulnerability was terrifying, especially for men like us who'd been trained to be strong. I told him my story too, slowly, in pieces. The explosion in the marketplace, the friends I'd lost, the civilian casualties that haunted me more than anything else because they'd just been trying to live their lives and we'd brought war to their doorstep. Marcus listened without trying to fix anything, without offering empty platitudes about service and sacrifice. He just listened, and sometimes that was more healing than any therapy session. The night everything changed was about 6 weeks into our stay. I'd had a particularly brutal nightmare, one that left me disoriented and shaking so badly I couldn't hold a glass of water. Marcus came over like always, but this time when he took my hand, I broke down completely. Not the silent tears I'd allowed myself before, but full body-racking sobs that I'd been holding back for years. All the grief and guilt and rage I'd been carrying came pouring out, and I couldn't stop it. Marcus pulled me against his chest, his good arm wrapping around my shoulders while I fell apart. He held me like I was something precious, something worth saving, and kept whispering that I was okay, that I was safe, that he had me. And somewhere in the middle of my breakdown, I realized that his presence had become essential to me, that the thought of leaving this hospital and not seeing him every day made my chest ache in a way that had nothing to do with PTSD. When I finally calmed down enough to pull back, I couldn't meet his eyes. I was embarrassed by how much I'd revealed, how desperately I'd clung to him. But Marcus put his hand under my chin, gently tilting my face up, until I had no choice but to look at him. And what I saw there made my breath catch. His eyes were soft but intense, filled with something I was afraid to name because naming it would make it real. And real things could hurt you. "I need to tell you something," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "And if it makes things weird, I'm sorry, but I can't keep pretending." He took a shaky breath. "These past weeks with you, they've been the best part of being in this place. Not just because we help each other with the nightmares, but because you make me want to get better. You make me remember why I fought so hard to survive. And I know this might not be what you want to hear, and I know we're both messed up and broken right now, but I'm falling for you. I've probably been falling for you since that first night I held your hand. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I'd never been with a man before, never even considered it. But as I sat there looking at Marcus, I realized that what I felt for him went so far beyond friendship that I'd been lying to myself for weeks. The way my pulse jumped when he smiled at me. The way I looked for him first thing every morning. The way his touch could calm me when nothing else could. I'd been falling too, I just hadn't had the courage to admit it. "Marcus," I started, my voice rough from crying, and then I stopped because I didn't have the words. So instead, I did something I'd never done before, something that terrified me and felt absolutely right at the same time. I leaned forward and kissed him. It was gentle, tentative, both of us afraid of breaking something fragile. His lips were soft and warm, and when he kissed me back, I felt something in my chest unlock, some tight knot of fear and shame I'd been carrying without even realizing it. We stayed like that for a long moment, foreheads pressed together, breathing each other's air, and I felt more at peace than I had in years. We took things slowly after that. The hospital wasn't exactly conducive to romance, and we were both still working through our trauma, but we carved out moments, holding hands during group therapy, sitting close enough that our shoulders touched during meals, stolen kisses in the courtyard when no one else was around. It wasn't much, but it was ours, and it was real. The nightmares didn't stop, but they changed. Marcus still came to my bed when I woke up screaming, but now he'd climb in next to me, careful of his healing shoulder, and hold me until morning. Having him there, feeling his heartbeat steady against my back, made the darkness less overwhelming. I started sleeping through some nights, and when I did have nightmares, I recovered faster, because I wasn't alone anymore. We were both scheduled to be discharged around the same time, and as the date approached, we had to have the conversation we'd been avoiding. What happened when we left? We lived in different states. We were both still dealing with our demons. Starting a relationship under these circumstances seemed impossible, but the thought of losing him seemed worse. The night before my discharge, we lay in my bed together, the room dark except for the light from the hallway. Marcus was tracing patterns on my arm with his finger, a habit he'd developed that I found incredibly soothing. "Come to Oregon," he said suddenly. "I know it's crazy, and I know we're moving fast, but I can't imagine going back to my life without you in it. You don't have to decide right now. You could visit first, see if you like it, but I want to try this. I want to try us." I thought about my apartment back home, empty and lonely, filled with memories of the person I used to be. I thought about my sister, who'd been begging me to move closer to her in Seattle anyway. And I thought about Marcus, about how he'd held my hand through the worst nights of my life and never let go, about how he'd seen me at my most broken and hadn't turned away. "Okay," I said, and felt him go still beside me. "Okay. I'll come to Oregon. I'll try." The smile he gave me was the first one I'd seen that reached his eyes, bright and genuine and full of hope. He kissed me then, deep and slow, and I kissed him back with everything I had, all the gratitude and affection and tentative love I'd been holding inside. We've been in Portland for 3 months now. We have a small apartment in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but it's ours. The nightmares still come sometimes, for both of us, but we face them together. When I wake up shaking, Marcus is there, his hand finding mine in the darkness just like he did that first night at the VA hospital. And when he has his bad nights, I hold him the same way, steady and sure, letting him know he's not alone. We're both in therapy, both working on healing the parts of us that war broke. Some days are harder than others, but we're building something real here, something that started in the most unlikely place and grew into something I never expected to find. Love, partnership, home. Last week, Marcus surprised me by having my name tattooed next to his friends' names on his ribs. Right over his heart, he said, where it belonged. I cried, which still embarrasses me, but he just held me like always and told me that crying didn't make me weak. It made me human. I don't know what the future holds. We're both still figuring out who we are after everything we've been through. But I know that whatever comes, we'll face it together, hand in hand, just like we did during those long nights at the VA hospital. He held my hand through the nightmares and never let go, and I plan to do the same for him, for as long as he'll have me. Sometimes the most beautiful things grow in the darkest places, and sometimes the person you need most shows up exactly when you've stopped looking. I'm grateful every day that Marcus was assigned to my room, that he had the courage to reach out in the darkness, and that I was brave enough to reach back.